Development in New South Wales steam technology as far as freight locomotives go. This is the final steam engines we got. When we started the 1924 classification, anything in the 30s was passenger steam. Anything in the 50s was freight steam, and of course we had 50 class, 53, well we had 50 class, 53s, 55s, 57s, 58s, 59s, and then we get to the 60 class, of which to speak after the war, these were actually designed a bit with the collaboration of the New South Wales Railways and the builder. The builder was actually Bayer Peacock in Great Britain, and these engines were imported in kit form to Sydney and assembled. They were completely knocked down and assembled when they got to Sydney. It was originally an order for 50. Because of dieselisation, they tried to cut it back, and eventually we got 40 of those 50, and this was 60-40. Subsequently, from some of the parts, another 2 were built. So there was actually 42 of these engines. So these are 4 wheels leaning. So this is a 4, 8, 4. Now these 60 class are actually articulated. They have a common boiler with no effective wheels underneath it. So we've got a 484 plus 484. So there are 484 plus 484. Because they've got 8 driving wheels, which in universal coding systems goes D. A is for 2 wheels, B is for 4, C is for 6, 8 is D. Instead of, we've got the D50s, the D53s. These are an articulated D class, so they call them the AD60. So hence you see AD60 here, articulated 8 driving wheels, 60 class locomotives. And the first time they ever really worked in pairs was at Molong, where they used to haul the famous W44 concentrate train, which was an enormously heavy load coming from Broken Hill going to Sulphide Junction in Newcastle, up near Newcastle. And they used to double head as these engines are about to do out of Molong. This is at Molong, Sydney's back that way, and here they are, 2 of them coupled up, ready to go. As steam locomotives got bigger, it got harder to get inside and oil and lubricate various motions in there. So for a state of convenience, and convenience more so than anything else, it became more and more the case that everything moved to the outside, everything to do with the transmission of power. So here's the cylinder. This does all the work. This is auxiliary. This is where the steam is coming, and it's basically big piston in here, big cylindrical piston with a few piston rings, gets pushed down here, moves this. And this is what we call a crosshead, and we come via the connecting rod. This is a big con rod, comes up to here. This is called the big end, and then we go via coupling rods to transmit all that force across the wheels here. So what else is there to do? Well, we need to control when the steam is going into and out of the cylinders. So what you'll notice is we have this and this and this and this and this and this. And this is part of what they call Walschaerts valve gear, which is the most successful valve gear ever, probably, apart from Americans had an equivalent called Baker. But this was used to control when the steam's coming in there, steam's coming from into there, into these cylinders. It needs to be controlled when it's going to be at this end and when it's going to be at that end. And this valve gear system, which is in the earlier locomotives you don't see because it's all on the inside of the frames, moved to the outside for success in ease of lubrication, and it controls the emission of steam. And it's also important for when you want to reverse the locomotive because the steam has to be entering at a different time. This is the 43 class. This followed the 40 class, not too far in time. Same motor. This is actually a Co-Co, and the other one's an A1A. So this has traction motors on all the wheels, 6 driving wheels. So it's a CO, no coupling rod, so hence the O. And this is a CO, and 40 class is an A1A. The 40 class is what they call a hood design, and this is what they call a car body design. That's the headlights, and that's the marker lights, and that's the original single marker light up there. And this is a pin connection for having multiple unit operation. Okay. Here we have 2 examples of what was the New South Wales 30 class. If you have a look, this is 3001, so this is the class leader, 30 class number 1. This here is effectively the 137th. We had 145 of these engines, and they were in this format when they were built, and they were one of 3 significant classes built by probably one of our most significant railway engineers, William Thowell, who came from Great Britain. He was on Great Western. He got to work his way up in the South Australian railways, and he was headhunted and brought over here as the chief mechanical engineer. He introduced 3 locomotives, 32 class for passenger. It was a fantastic, best passenger engine out in many ways. 50 class for freight, and 30 class for suburban tank, for suburban work. So we just come down here a little bit. You might notice when we get to about here that this engine's different to this engine. This is how they originally were. They are a 4, 6, 4 tank engine. The water is, most of the water is carried there in this what they call a side tank. We also have a tank here, we have a little bunker here, and that's the engine. There's no tender. So such engines are useful for suburban working where you're going to come off a train, run around it and go backwards. And so these engines were used right up to the end of steam at Everleigh Workshop at Everleigh, and we found shunting Sydney Terminal even in the 1970s. When we electrified the suburban system in the 1920s, great as these engines were, they're not good for running long distances. There's normally only 3 tonnes of coal up there. That's got an extended bunker. You just might notice there's a rib there and there's an extended bunker there, and there are various types of shapes for that. That had effectively 3 tonnes of coal. These engines are quite a good performer, although they tend to fuss along. They've got little driving wheels and 4'7" driving wheels. So what they did, they thought, well, hang on, we can use these engines to replace yet older steam locomotives out in the country. So they removed the side tanks, and so you have this. They took the frame and they cut it off there, they got rid of the last 4 wheels, so it became a 460, and then here you see it coupled up with 32 class tender, which was the main passenger steam engine, this was a relative of, as I said, there were the 32s, the 50s and the 30 class, and this is a 32, this is what we call a bogie tender. You've got a bogie there and a bogie there, and this carries, this is the famous 3650 gallon, 3650 gallon water tank. And you've got coal is up there above that line, above that rivet line, and the water is here, and you feed the water in there and you drop the coal in up the top there. So this is your tender. Very successful, used on many of the country branches right up to the end.